Alrighty, so here we're going to have a listen to Ode to Joy, which makes me think that this is in fact going to be Beethoven that we are going to be taking a look at today, as he is the composer of the Ode to Joy Symphony. Let's listen and click around. Alrighty. So the purpose of this lesson is to experience the movement of melodies by skips, steps, and repeated notes. The objectives are to recognize that melodies can move by steps, skips, or they can stay the same. Our keywords are melodic direction, steps, skips, repeated notes, and we might get to re today. So, as I mentioned, the song that we just listened to was written or composed by Beethoven. In fact, that is one of my very favorite choral songs to sing. I almost every single year sing it. This past year we didn't get to because of lockdown, but it's usually played around December time at the symphony. So if you ever want to see it live, that's only one section of one movement. And I believe there's something like 10 movements in the entire symphony. So it's quite large. Let's listen a little bit to information about Beethoven.
That's great!
In this story, Quaver will be playing the role of Beethoven.
Have you ever faced a challenge? Have you ever had to overcome an injury, a disability, or a disadvantage in your life? Now, it could be really tough, but that's just what happened to Ludwig van Beethoven. Beethoven lived from 1770 to 1827, and by the age of 26, he began to find it hard to hear his piano. What? I mean, imagine it. You're one of the greatest composers in the world. Everyone is waiting for your next great piece of music, but you can't even hear the notes.
I can't hear a thing.
What do you do? It's a terrifying and embarrassing situation. But Beethoven was determined to think outside the box. He wouldn't let his disadvantage get in the way of his music. So first, he got a stick. Yes, a stick. He put it on his piano. He bit down on it. The vibrations of the sound went up from the strings through the stick and into his mouth, kind of bypassing his ears. And his crazy idea worked, and not happy. But he still searched for more ways to hear his music. This time, he got a saw. Yes, a circular saw. Okay, he got a chainsaw. Jigsaw? Handsaw. Yes, a handsaw! And sawed off the legs of his piano. He then put his ear to the ground and had someone play the notes to see if he could feel and hear the vibrations through the ground. More! More! Louder! Louder! Fortissimo! That was pretty much it. Now, it's hard to see the happy ending in the story, but there is one. Because Beethoven was such a great composer and was so persistent, he was able to put all his frustrations and anger about being deaf into his music. So really, you could say that out of his struggle came some of the most passionate and amazing music ever created. So, if you're fighting an injury, a disability, or a disadvantage, be determined. Keep going, think outside the box, and stay strong. Don't let it stop you being you. And just like Beethoven, something amazing will come out of it. Never ever give up, and great things can happen.
So that's probably one of the more interesting facts about Beethoven is that as he got older, he did go deaf. So what that means is he could not hear his own music. But being the composer that he was, and like many of the composers that there are today, you don't necessarily need to hear your music in order to write your music. Just like when we have a dream and we can talk in that dream, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking out loud. Or if we have a dream and we can hear music in that dream, doesn't necessarily mean that music is playing. The brain is such a special organ that basically you can hear the music in your brain. For example, when people say they get a song stuck in their head, that song isn't actually playing, it's just in here. And so that's how Beethoven was able to continue composing music even though he couldn't hear it. He understood it enough and he knew what it would sound like because he could hear it in his head. And as we saw, he came up with a couple of different strategies on how he could sort of hear it in different ways, more so feel it in his body as well as hear it in his brain. So next we have a little bit of information, basic information about Beethoven. Let's wait for that book to be pulled up. You can see here we have some facts, some fun facts. I'll just go ahead and read them. And then we will move on into our steps, skips, and repeats. So, what composer lived during two music time periods, you ask? Meet Ludwig van Beethoven. Ludwig van Beethoven was born in Bonn, Germany in 1770 during the classical time period. As you can see, below, you can see Ludwig van Beethoven is in red. He is from 1770 until 1827. So most of his life, especially his young life, he lived during the classical period, musical classical period. But about, let's say, 2/3 through his life, music started changing. And it moved into the Romantic period. In fact, it was only the last 7 years of his life that he was part of the Romantic period. So that means most of Beethoven's music is considered part of the classical period, even though he lived during both musical time periods. Ludwig van Beethoven played the violin, piano, and the organ. When Beethoven was 7 years old, he gave his first public piano concert. So that isn't like a recital that we have today where you invite just your family and friends. A public piano concert is going to be in front of many people that he does not know. And he was 7 years old. I cannot imagine the pressure, but he was a prodigy. So that's typically what would happen. Mozart also started playing at a very young age. So then at the age of 26, Beethoven started to become deaf, but it did not stop him from writing music. Now here are a couple of his most famous songs. We already listened to the last one, which was Symphony No. 9, Ode to Joy. You can see an outline of the classical orchestra setup. If you go to the symphony these days, this is the same setup that you'll see, except for behind the timpanis, the trumpets, and the French horns, that's where the choir will be. So let's listen for Elise, Moonlight Sonata, and Symphony No. 5. We'll listen to parts of those. And I do want to point out that all of these songs should be at least semi-recognizable because they are extremely famous. So let's try for Elise. All right, so that was for Elise. That is a piano piece. Next, let's give a listen to Symphony No. 9. All right, so just like Symphony Number 9, the Ode to Joy Symphony, Symphony Number 5 is not completely shown here. It's not the full symphony. It's only one section of one movement, but it's the most popular movement, just as Ode to Joy is. So finally, we have the Moonlight Sonata. Let's give that one a listen as well. Now that we've learned a little bit about Beethoven, let's go ahead and take a look at some simple pieces of music here. What we're going to do is I'm going to connect the dots with my draw tool. And what I would like for you to do is when I press play, I want you to use your hand as a guide to show where the movement goes. As you can see at the beginning, it starts fairly high or in the middle, drops down low, then slowly moves back to the middle and then back low. So I will explain it as I'm drawing so you can see it visually. Let's use green. All right, so we're starting down low. 3 repeated notes, moving up to another line, which is a skip, moving up again, another skip, repeated note, up a step, down a step, repeated note, down a skip, rest, so no notes. Then we start G, down a step, repeated note, down a skip, rest. Then we start A, down a step, repeated note, down a skip, rest. Back to the same as the beginning. 3 notes that are repeated, up a skip, repeated, up a step, repeated, down a skip, up a skip, repeated note, down a step, repeated note, down a step, repeated note, and down a step. A skip is when you have a line going to another line or a space going to another space. You're skipping a note in between. A step would be if you don't skip a note. You go from a line to a space or a space to a line. And a repeated note is if you don't move up or down at all and you just have the same note a second time. Let's go ahead now. Oops. And let's use our hands to show the melody and the phrase while I play the music.
Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight? Come out tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon? Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight? Come tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon? Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight, come out tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon? Buffalo gals, won't you come?
All right, and that just repeats a bunch of times. We're going to do this one more time. This time, I want you to really look for where the note stays the same. There's lots of points where the note stays the same versus skips or steps. Let's draw. All right, we start on an A. Let's make my color this one this time. Start on an A. We repeat an A, so that's repeat. A again, same note. Then we move down by a step, down by another step.
Miss Hannah, you're muted.
Thank you. All right, we're connecting the dots again, and we're really looking towards where there are repeated notes and where there are steps and skips. As I was saying a second ago when you didn't hear me, there was 3 repeated notes followed by a step down and then another step down. Then we go up a skip, and then we have 2 more repeated notes down by a skip. Second line, we have 4 repeated A's. Down a step, up a skip, repeated A's, and then down a skip. So it's the same thing 2 times. Repeated notes are the same pitch performed one after the other. That's not important right now. Okay. All right, so let's listen and use our hands to show the repeated notes, the jumps up and the jumps down, and the steps as well.
Frog in the meadow can't get enough. Take a little stick and stir him about. Frog in the meadow can't get enough. Take a little stick and stir him about. Frog in the meadow can't get enough. Take a little stick and stir him about.
All righty. Here we have a picture of the Pentagon. Now, the Pentagon has 5 sides to it. We can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the word, or the part of the word that starts the word Pentagon, penta, is in fact meaning 5. So what we're going to talk about is the pentatonic scale. How many notes are in the pentatonic scale? There are 5 notes in the pentatonic scale. Now that scale can start on any single letter that is in the musical alphabet. But in this example, we have the pentatonic scale starting on G. G, A, B, C. Oh, never mind. G, A, B, D, and E. So the notes that are in the pentatonic scale are do, re, mi, sol, and la. We skip over fa in the pentatonic scale. Pentatonic means a scale that contains do, re, mi, skip fa, sol, and la. So what did we learn today? We recognized that melodies can move by steps, skips, and repeated notes. We defined what a melodic direction was, moving up, moving down, staying the same. We defined what a skip was, what a step was, and what repeated notes were. And we did not get into re. We'll do that another time. So that is it. And that means since we are finished, there is no additional homework. other than to check back and make sure that everything is completed in your Jupyter. And send when you complete the items, make sure you're sending me a message to let me know you completed it, so I know to go back and check. I don't just go back and check on every single assignment because it's way too many people to check for. So make sure you send that message when you know you've completed something, and tell me specifically the assignment that you've completed. Because if you just say, Miss Kristen, I completed the assignment, I'm not sure which one you mean. So tell me what the assignment's name was and that you completed it, when you have completed it and submitted it.